afternoon. Thanks for your patience. Welcome to Conversations That Matter. My name is Brittany Butler.
And I'm Michelle Treece. We had a little moment of hair and makeup. I hope we look cute.
We're so pleased to have two great guests with us this evening. We have Ruth and Tina. So let me get this switched around.
Okay, so our guests, and what we'll do is we'll have them introduce themselves, just a little quick intro of who you are and what you do. Who goes first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
I'm Tina Johnson, and I am the director at Safe House Domestic Violence Program and Sexual Assault Program. I am from Bristol originally, but have lived in Johnson City for probably the last 20 years.
Hi, I'm Ruth Taylor Reed. I have lived in Johnson City for a really long time. I'm a small business owner, and I'm on the board of Safe House Johnson City and Kingsport with Frontier Health.
Great. So what did you think this was going to be about? Have you seen some of our episodes? What are you expecting?
Oh, I'm expecting just the most engaging conversation, knowing you, and maybe some enlightenment about some of the issues that are important to the community these days, relevant issues that are important to all of us.
Perfect. How about you, Tina? What are you expecting?
Same. I looked over some of the episodes and really interested in the topics that you all cover, and hope we can learn some things and maybe help with shed some light on some things that we've experienced.
Great. So let's see. Well, we basically started this because we had some concern in the community, Washington County, that there's no racism. We're all happy here and there's no problem. So we'll kind of talk about that first. So you're originally from the area, both of you, this region. Have you seen any kind of what would I say, racism or treating people differently based on race, based on other being different? Have you seen that personally? Maybe experience it yourself some form?
I can take this one first if you want to think for a second. Since I have a daughter who is Black, I can tell you firsthand that racism is alive and well. A lot of explanations are needed when you go out in public. People can be obnoxiously curious. I can't tell you how many times I answered, "Is she yours? Oh, how long has she been with you? Is she yours?" And they would feel her hair and they would look at me, and they would feel her hair and they would look at me. And, that was in the late 80s. And I think that although progress has been made, like on a lot of issues, I don't think enough progress has been made. And I think that that's because there's an unwillingness to address what has happened in the past. And if you have been guilty of racism on any level at all, you need to educate yourself. You need to apologize, say you're sorry. I can be better. I can do better. I can say better. I can live better. And we don't find that happening a lot.
No, very clear. Very clear. I don't know if we've ever had a white guest share that perspective. And so that's good. I hope we can elaborate on that a little more so that we can kind of reach out to people, let them know this is what's going on. Yeah. How about you, Tina?
Unfortunately, yes, I see racism every day in my work life and my personal life. You feel like we've come a long way, but then when you see just blatant racism and people using excuses of "I didn't mean it like that," or "I don't see color," no, I have a Black friend, I hear those things daily, and it's not acceptable. People, I'm getting older, and people my age, we can do better. We kind of give some older people a pass, like generations before me, we give them a pass. Well, they grew up like this, they don't know, but we all know it's wrong, and we all, I'm not perfect. I find myself, we all have biases, and every day I try to see my own issues and learn from those. I grew up in Bristol, Tennessee. It's small. I didn't have lots of exposure, but I try to learn every day and try to do better. Once I knew better, I did better, basically.
Right. And Tina, can you talk a little bit about the branch house and what sort of work you do there, and does it overlap at all with some of these issues that you see?
Yeah, sure. So I'm the director of 2 domestic violence shelters, one in Johnson City and one in Kingsport, and then a sexual assault program that serves the whole area. So we see victims from all backgrounds. Unfortunately, we predominantly serve white victims, white clients, and I'm always looking, what are we doing? What can we do? You know, how can we we know everyone suffers from domestic violence and can be a victim, but we have to kind of look at our program and make sure that we're representing everyone and that we're not just, 10 white social workers in a fully white shelter with, nothing that looks like anyone else. Or so I'm constantly trying to work on that. It was my goal when we added staff to try to add people from all backgrounds, so that when you walk in and you're a victim, you see someone that looks like you, and things around the house are things that make you feel comfortable, and down to the products we have in our little health and beauty area for the clients to choose from. I had a very, very good friend tell me, I walk in here and I see this stuff, and that's not what I use on my hair. You need to let's go shopping. So I loved that. I love that she told me that. Never thought about it. I thought we were doing great, and she taught me some really hard lessons, but I've never forgotten them. And I share, I continue to remember all the things she taught me and try to make our shelters be friendly for everyone.
Was this a woman of color?
It was.
Yeah.
It was. And she ended up being one of my very best friends. I met her as a client in the shelter, and we developed a friendship probably for 20 years, and she passed away now, but at a very young age, unfortunately. But she and her children taught me so much. I had never had someone I cared about. I love her. I love her children, and I had never actually experienced someone being hurt and being, crying over something that happened to them. And until you see it, and it's someone that, put a real personal aspect to it, it was just, I learned so much from them.
Can we agree that there's probably families of color that need your help, but they don't know about it? Do they not feel comfortable? What do you think is?
Yeah, I think that they don't feel comfortable. We've added 2 women of color to our staff, but that's not enough. I want to do more, but more importantly, I want to reach the population and let them know we are here for everyone. And it's not just something we put on our brochure or something we say. We really mean that. I'm constantly looking at our services, trying to decide, what am I missing, or could we be doing more, or is there something, that would make someone feel more comfortable here that we're not catching? But absolutely, they need services. Everyone does. And I just finished some reporting for some quarterly reporting, and when you have 113 white victims and 3 African-American victims, I just did the demographics, and that's, it bothers me. I know that there's people who need services that we're not reaching.
Right. We'll have to figure out how to make that happen.
Absolutely.
Because I think it's, I see that in concerts. I see that in, things that are going on in Founders Park. I see that in restaurants. And I think, I say all the time, where are the Black people?
Yes.
And even sadly, even in a shelter like that, where are the people of color?
Yes.
And I think a lot of times people just do not feel welcome to go into those spaces.
I think it even, I'm sorry,
No.
I think it even surpasses that. Before Frontier Health took over sexual assault advocacy, I served on a task force years before that. And so I got called on some cases, and it is beyond not feeling comfortable. It's fear.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, I'm not calling the police. I'm not calling the cops. I am not doing this. And so I became a story gatherer, but they didn't receive the services they could have received. But let me also say that before Frontier Health stepped up, those services were not consistent. Policies didn't exist. Services weren't known. People assume that if someone who is victimized by sexual assault or rape there's a program in place, there was policy in place, there are people in place, and that was not the case until Frontier Health came on board. So it's beyond discomfort, Michelle, it's fear.
And what year did Frontier come on board with us?
I started in 2013. What year did you, 2018?
2018 is when we
2018.
fully took on sexual assault services.
Wow.
We've had the domestic violence services for years, but no one really was handling sexual assault for so many years. And then Ruth and a few
Raised
people-
tackles, which is why I don't serve on other boards. But yeah, my daughter is very open about her story, and so I can just look you both in the eye and say that Tina saved my daughter's life. And so I'm always going to serve on Tina's board or do whatever Tina needs done, because not only do I owe her, I know the work that has yet to be done. We've made great strides since 2013. They have been amazing, but we still have work to do.
Absolutely.
And Ruth, we had a question in the chat from Diane. She said, do you get those same type of questions when you are with your granddaughters?
Interesting, because my oldest granddaughter has lived with me most of her life. And so when she was about, I don't know, 5 or 6, she began going to not the task force meetings, but she would go to conversations in the community about the need for SANE nurses. And not everyone knows what a SANE nurse is. It's a sexual assault nurse examiner. And so she watched us build a program on ETSU's campus, and she knows what those are. And she knows my friends. You know, there are sometimes, even when you love family members, you don't always want them to be your safe space. And so they have all of my friends' numbers. And I say, if something happens to you and I'm not your person, these are your people. So we have those conversations.
Yeah, I wonder if folks had heard, because I've only briefly heard about the SANE nurses, but can you explain that a little bit? And so it's sexual assault nurse
Examiner.
examiners.
Correct. So yeah, but prior to 2018, we had one nurse, one SANE nurse that served the entire region, or tried, you know, not one person cannot serve that many areas, but then our friend Judy McCook got a grant to bring on many more SANE nurses and train them, so that any emergency room you walk into in the area, you would have a trained SANE that would perform your forensic exam. And so my role with that is I have advocates on my staff, and I do it as well, but we go out to the hospital with a client when they've experienced a sexual assault, and just be with them, be present for their exam, aftercare, just anything they need during that time. And it's been great. The difference is huge, because when, you know, before we took this on, there was nothing. There was no one there to be with the person. Prior to Ruth's services, there was just nothing for that victim, and you can't cover that big of an area. You know, we now serve 7 hospitals in the area, so pretty much anywhere we can get to within a reasonable amount of time, we'll come and be with that person, and then provide therapy and just all the things they need after an assault as well.
And just for the record, this is Sexual Assault Awareness Month.
It is.
And are there any kind of events going on? Is there anything that people may participate in with the rest of the month, or anything that happened earlier?
Yeah, so
that
we've had a few. We had a couple of things at ETSU. We did a walk a mile in her shoes, and then the day before that, we had an event where we just kind of set up some booths and talked about our services, and people took the pledge to start by believing. And then actually next week at Ruth's restaurant, Cranberries, we're going to have a viewing of I'm Not Evidence, and going to watch that with some people who are concerned, you know, in the community. And we're going to keep attendance low because of COVID, but we may find a way to Zoom a meeting before that, or involve the community. But, you know, we did that last year, and it was really successful. Just letting people know that sexual assault happens year round, of course, and we take this month to remember victims and try to prevent some sexual assaults, or letting people know what to do if it happens to them.
That's great. So Ruth, you mentioned that we've got a long way to go. We've made strides. What are some other things that you would love to see with this program?
With sexual assault awareness?
Mhm.
Well, I think that we all have opportunities, especially during this month. I know we had a National Wear Teal Day. And so at our restaurant, when we put on teal, we started those conversations. And I was asked by a reporter a few years ago, do you think Me Too, that movement, made an impact? Yes, Me Too made a solid impact in allowing sexual assault survivors and victims to know their community, to have an opportunity to share their story, to bring down those in power who thought it was okay to say things and touch women, touch men, to abuse their power. Men of power were coming down, and it was acceptable now to have the conversations that we didn't have before. We all remember Anita Hill.
Mhm.
We remember what we watched on television. We remember how she was, every ounce of credibility that she walked in with was taken away. We remember that, those of us who are older. And now we hear that story and we think, hopefully I wouldn't let that happen where I am. In my workplace, there are no personal comments about how someone looks.
Mhm.
If there is, come get me, I'm your person. Because that's not the type of person we want to attract anyway. So I don't mind if they don't come back.
Right. Now, I hear of situations that places of business where people say, oh, it's a toxic environment. And I cannot imagine working every day, going in just to make the money you need to survive, knowing that someone is making, harassing comments or touching your body or something.
We are working with a client right now, and of course, nothing confidential. I won't give any of that away, but she's a very young girl. She was working in an office, and her boss had her meet him, after hours for what she fully believed was work. She had not had the life experience to really even have any red flags about that. And he assaulted her, and he's a man of power, money, a little more so than a 19-year-old college student would be. And he is intimidating her every step of the way with multiple lawyers. And, there's, we've come a long way, but we haven't really in sexual assault and in many areas, because she's being intimidated and bullied, and everything about her is being questioned, but no one's questioning him. We haven't got to the part where why did you rape her? We're still, what were you doing? Didn't you think about that? Let us, law enforcement, let us have your cell phone so we can go through every single thing on your phone and then question you about it. So we're re-victimizing her every step of the way, to the point where now, clients ask me all the time, what would you do? Would you go through with prosecution? Would you, it's a hard question, because my heart for them wants to tell them, it obviously has to be your choice, but get ready, because it's going to hurt, and and when we look at statistics of how many of those will eventually be convicted, and then when you look even past that of how much jail time those people get, it's very grim. It's just horrifying, really.
But I think too that's part of the services that Frontier Health provides. Statistically speaking, when they walk with a client through the court process, the odds of them staying through that court process increases dramatically, and they offer those services as well. It's not just the trip to the emergency room.
And that was my next thing. So you get a phone call about someone that's been sexually assaulted. What happens? What are the steps that are taken?
Yeah, so we get a phone call, usually from the hospital, but sometimes from law enforcement, and they basically just say 19-year-old male or 19-year-old female or whatever at Indian Path, room 11. So we show up at the ER. We've asked the victim, do you want an advocate to come in with you? And they've already agreed to that. If they say no, we still come, but we don't see that person. We just bring them a bag with some clothing, because a victim's clothing are taken as part of evidence. So we bring some information, some clothing, and we leave. We don't ever see that person. We respect their wishes, but most of the time they want an advocate there. So we go in, introduce ourselves, let them know, hey, this is why I'm here, and this is what I can do to help you. I can do any of this all of it or just a few things. We want to put them in control right away and let them know I can be in here for your exam or I can step out. I can, give you a ride home and take you to a safe place. We can pick you up tomorrow and go get follow-up medical care, can go to meet with law enforcement with you, just whatever you want me to do through the process. And, sometimes people want you to talk the whole time to them and they ask questions. And then sometimes people won't even say a word to you through the whole thing. And you're thinking, am I even helping her? Is this, and they'll say to you at the end, thank you so much for being here. And you really just have to realize it's that quiet presence of just being there and they're not alone and you're completely there for them. You're not worried about medical things that need to be done. You're not there as law enforcement. You're just completely there as their voice for them.
Now, if a phone call comes in, it's going to be you. How many other staff members?
So it's very small. We have about a 5-person rotation and we cover 24/7. We rotate by weeks and then we have backup because unfortunately we'll have 2 at once all the time, or a lot of the times. It happens at the worst times usually, and you'll have more than one. Since just recently in the past few months, we've picked up pediatric sexual assault cases because there was no one there to go to the hospital for the families or the child. So we're trying to gauge if we can handle that through June. We're going to see what the flow of clients are and, can we handle that and pick that up? And make a final decision on that in July. But, a family member needs you there. Children are different than adults. They typically don't really even understand what's happening. Lots of the kids that we go with, but their parents are often devastated and understand kind of what this trauma is going to do to their child long term and really need somebody there with them. So we're going to try to make that work.
I hate to ask the question, but how many pediatric cases have you seen in this?
As many as adults, if not more. We haven't served that many, but just because we just started taking that on. But when you look at numbers, which I just wrote some grants for our sexual assault program, and pediatric cases are probably 30% over adult sexual assaults. And it's typically family members, someone in the home or a family member, a trusted adult, typically.
I know over the pandemic when schools were closed, one of the things that was noted that there was an increase in child and school age sexual assault.
Absolutely. Nobody had their eyes on those kids either. So, they weren't coming in each day. Nobody knew if they were struggling at home, if domestic violence or sexual assault was going on in their home or happening to them. And
nobody could see their bruises and that kind of thing.
Yes.
Again, thank a teacher.
Yes.
That was an issue. Wow.
And there are 2 certifications for SANE nurses. You can be certified as a pediatric SANE nurse or as an adult SANE nurse, or you can hold them both, but they are 2 different trainings.
And how about, so your program, is it for women only?
No, we serve men, women. We serve any victim that comes to us. So we have less men than women, of course, just like domestic violence. Statistically, it does happen to women more, domestic violence and sexual assault, but there are a whole lot of men that are experiencing these things who are not coming for services. And that's for, some of the very same reasons that minorities and underserved populations don't come. There's fear of just the shame of coming forward, or I'm a man, I shouldn't need help, or I should be able to handle this, or I shouldn't let this happen to me. But when you work with a male victim, it is absolutely no different than working with a female. They are a victim. It's no different to me. In the fact that I want to help them just as much. I want to provide every service available.
Right. How about and I don't know in this area, but transgender folks?
Yeah, so we have I know my numbers just because I did reports. So we had 3, we served 3 transgender clients at shelter last year and 5 sexual assault victims who were trans. So that population has a whole different set of insecurities and trauma that they have to go through. Ruth helped us with a client last year who was at our shelter. She had been sexually assaulted, domestic violence had been occurring. Her abuser took her wig when as part of the assault to keep her there, because that was very important to her. And she would stay in her room all the time, never come out, wouldn't speak to anyone. Finally, she did start talking to me and told me, I cannot be out around people without my wig. It's just my security. It's what makes me feel feminine, and I need it. So I have a great team of people, and Ruth talked with somebody, and we got a beautiful wig for her. And it made all the difference. You know, she was afraid to tell anyone that. She was thankful to be safe and have a place to be, to sleep, and food to eat, but she needed that before she could do anything else. And you know, you just have to be sensitive to those issues, since, you know, we learn, like I said, we don't always do the right thing or know the right things to do, but just in the past year, we've added just clothing that doesn't necessarily, not male or female, just, you know, gender neutral type pants, lounge pants and t-shirts, and made sure that we have those available. So we're not just showing up with male or female clothing. So we're, you know, we're trying to learn things as we go, and try to meet the needs of everyone respectfully.
Yeah, I'm thinking of this question of walking in somewhere and knowing you're welcome or feeling comfortable. And Ruth, I think folks know that like Cranberries is a welcoming place and open to everyone. Was that something you thought about consciously, or like did you think, oh, let me take actions to make sure this is a welcoming place?
It's part of our mission statement.
Okay.
We're also a drop-off place. Anyone that wants to give things to Frontier, or anyone that is in either of the safe houses. I don't know that from day one it started that way. It started that way when I just innocently, like Gomer Pyle, walked into the Johnson City Police Chief's office, and I wanted to know why he had so many untested rape kits. That's how it started for me.
Well, and we actually just had a question from in the chat. I love to know what life paths brought you to be connected to this work. And so it sounds like that was something part of it.
It is, and here is where I don't make allies. I am a seminary student, and part of the reason that I'm a seminary student is because I found a lack of interest and a lack of reaction in the faith community in this region towards trauma victims. And it is so important to a trauma victim how they view their higher being, whatever it is. If it's a judgmental God, there is a whole lot of sociological data that shows their healing process is so much slower. If Tina and I have talked for years about if we could just get as many faith community members and leaders as possible to trauma-informed care or education, so they don't re-traumatize. I say scriptural texts in this region are often the literature of trauma. That is not the time to condemn. That is not the time to quote a verse. That is not the time to ask, where were you? Why? What were you wearing? What were you drinking? That's not the time. And there are so many of us in this region who are certified to teach trauma-informed care at no cost. I'm not aware of anyone that charges to teach that here. And as many of us as there are, and I don't even know how many that is at this point, but it's quite a few. We welcome the opportunity to come and say, listen, here are some of the causes, here are some of the actions, and here are some of the reactions to avoid re-traumatizing these victims. I think that's so important.
Yes.
We have often, we have often looked at each other and go, oh, where would we send them to worship that we know they'd be safe, that we know that they would be okay? We've asked ourselves that for years.
If there's any of you folks out there listening, because I think a lot of you have a connection with your churches, put your church's name out there if they are truly welcomed as they are.
Mine is. I'll brag on mine, Holston Valley Unitarian Universalist.
I have been
our
there, and I
restaurant.
have some friends there.
Yeah,
Yes.
so we win. No.
Yes, you do.
Yes, yes.
You also win because you have comprehensive sex ed, and part of comprehensive sex ed is what does a healthy relationship look like? You know, I am the grandmother of granddaughters, 16 and 13. They need to know what a healthy relationship looks like. They need to know this is not acceptable and you're a jerk.
Right. and not normalizing heterosexual cis
Correct.
relationships all the
And
time
that's it.
and, you know,
Correct.
just being open to not othering
Right.
people.
Yes.
Cindy and Sarah do an amazing job.
I'm very curious to see, well, let me back up, rephrase this question. Have you ever offered out to ministers in the area, hey, come over here, I want you to learn a little bit about, you're laughing. I want you to learn a little bit about trauma-informed care.
I used to work at ETSU as a program coordinator in the Department of Professional Development. And my boss, Darla Dye, was amazing. She knew who she was getting when she hired me as a program coordinator. We began a conference called Escape from Rape, a Cultural Change. We began trainings for sexual assault victim advocates. We began trainings for counselors and anyone on the front lines that responded to sexual assault victims and advocates. I repeatedly reached out and said, please come join us. Come listen to these speakers. We had an FBI agent, the local FBI agent, Tina. We had forensic nurses. They were amazing conferences and amazing training opportunities. No one came.
That's actually, that subject is one of the first things we bonded over. We had dinner one night and kind of shared we had worked together on some projects, but we kind of shared some of our personal life. And Ruth, I told Ruth how I was a victim of domestic violence got married really young and then found myself just in a scary situation. I had not grown up in any kind of violence, and I was involved in my church, and my church, I finally got the courage to leave my abuser, was not going to raise my two boys in that kind of environment. And the pastor immediately, I would think probably within 48 hours of me leaving the situation, he was at my door telling me I was breaking up my family. I really needed to come and meet with him and my ex-husband and explain to me how this was not what God wanted me to do. And I was trying to keep as many things consistent in my boys' life as I could during this time because they were already going through this. I show up at church just like I would have. My name had been erased from the nursery calendar. I always kept the nursery. So my name was listed on there. It had been removed from that. I was removed from Bible school, which I love kids. So I was removed from every duty at that church.
Canceled.
Just canceled. They canceled me. Yes. So, you know, that was hurtful because it hurt my feelings, you know, it just really hurt me to the core because I just was going to try to keep my boys' life, you know, as normal as possible. And that's what I experienced. So now I'm super sensitive to my clients that come in and ask me, is there a church around here that would welcome me? You know, this person might not have appropriate clothing. They might have lived a very rough life or gone through a lot of trauma, and they're asking me, where can I go? And I don't ever refer anyone to anywhere unless I know it's a safe place. So yes, absolutely. Yes.
Now you know.
Yes.
And by the way, no one has responded with the name of their church except for you guys. So you are winning.
Yeah, you know,
Yes.
I since I no longer work within a system, I can say things that someone in a system can't say. And I am throwing the gauntlet down. If you are in church leadership and you are interested in being trauma informed, you connect here on this, send a message here. Call in a few minutes. I'm going to ask Tina to give out some phone numbers. We'll show up. Someone will show up to train you. If you have a church and you are certain, just dead certain, that you would welcome anyone in your congregation, tell us. I would be happy to say.
I'll be interested
Absolutely.
to know. We got to get with Cindy and Sarah, because I think they did a trauma-informed care thing for religious leaders.
Good.
But I wonder if anyone
showed
showed up. I'm not sure.
Wow.
We'll have to.
Or if that's reflected in their church policy. You should have a trauma-informed policy. Tina and I actually worked with leaders at UU to help them adapt a policy for domestic violence in that church. Every church needs one.
What about at
Absolutely.
ETSU? Was there with students any? Because so the walk a mile in her shoes, I know there's been some conversation moving the blame and everything away from the victims. What were you wearing? Where were you? And it's like, you know, mothers raise your daughters to protect themselves as opposed to mothers raise your sons to not assault women. And so I'm wondering if there's conversations with sort of that age group, college students, like medical schools, pharmacy students, things like that.
Just to change that culture as they move through.
Yes, you know, as recent as it was right after we took over services in 2018-19, I was with a college student from ETSU. She had been to a couple of places downtown. She was 21, she could drink, she did nothing wrong. It wouldn't matter, you know, none of that would be a reason she should be victimized, but she had done nothing wrong. And law enforcement asked her, you wore that to go out with friends? It was a t-shirt dress, wedge sandals, and a blue jean jacket. It wouldn't matter what it was, but I thought you know, it was the most innocent clothing choices that a person could choose. There was nothing wrong with it. And it wouldn't have mattered what she was wearing, but I was thinking to myself, what if she were wearing something even more, you know, in that person's eyes is inappropriate? And this was a female asking her this, and I just couldn't believe it. You know, I could not believe it, even though I know it goes on. But to see the hurt cross her face, and she had already been sexually assaulted, and then just to see a person, you know, a helping profession person hurt her like that. When she was so vulnerable, it just blows my mind that we're still asking those questions in 2020, 21, 22.
I know, it's not that long ago. Right?
Yeah.
It's like happening today.
Absolutely.
Well, when I worked at ETSU, I think this was 2017, I actually helped curate an art show from survivors that started. It actually traveled a couple of places here in the Tri-Cities. And what was stunning about the art show was not just the fact that there were so many pieces. There were spoken pieces, there were written pieces, there were art pieces. I think what astounded people the most was the age of victims quite often. An FBI agent told me in this region during Escape from Rape Prep one year, it's wonderful that everyone is so interested in human trafficking and that the spotlight is on it. But that's not the biggest problem here in East Tennessee. It's cyclical family abuse. That's the #1 problem in East Tennessee. And when we saw artwork where children were displayed, and one of the artists said, yeah, it started on my 6th birthday. It was my grandfather. It happened for years. And when he died, we all lined up all the way out the door because we wanted to make sure he was dead. Now you have a young woman look at you and still gives me goosebumps 5 years later. But when you hear those stories and you see those pieces and you hear those pieces, you can't walk away. You cannot.
It makes me think also of the intersectionality of race, assault, and like our messed up justice system. And the kind of the police response, right, being sort of different depending on who you are, the judge response being different, and you know, just wow.
Now, again, I look at things through a different lens. I don't have burden of guilt to prove. So I say that on the outset, but I will say that I was told repeatedly by law enforcement, we need a credible witness. And we all know what that means. That means you have to remember, and you have to remember it in a timely manner, which of course defies how your brain reacts under the circumstances of trauma. And we have to be able to build a case. And so I would say if she can't remember, that's the beginning of your case. But that's not how it works.
So true.
Wow. Well, we had 2 questions. There was one before I'll read this one first. This one says, they would like to try a trauma-informed care at their church.
Yay!
Diane Nelson. Hi, Diane. Do you know Diane?
Hi, yes.
And she's not all people are actually welcome in spite of the motto of open minds, open doors. So I'm thinking, let's see.
And then from Diane also, how can we participate or assist in these projects with sexual assault and with domestic abuse / safe haven?
So we have a Facebook page, and I can put some information up just for people who are interested from this. It's Frontier Health Safe House, and maybe we could have a community focus meeting. I'm looking at Ruth because maybe we could do that at Cranberries. Sure. And we could just have a group of the community who want to come out and talk about these issues and how they can help. There's so many ways they can help, and we welcome that. So we would love to have a little meeting with the community. Anybody who's interested in any of the church trauma-informed care work, or sexual assault or domestic violence, and maybe we could get together and come up with some good ideas.
If the number is 1 in 4 for women and 1 in 6 for men, which it is, when you go to church on Sunday morning, if it isn't you, it's somebody beside you. And how are you going to engage in that conversation? Are you a safe space?
So I'm not one to go to church. You know, I'm a Seventh-day Jehovah's Methodist Baptist, that's a Jewish Catholicism.
She can do this a lot, okay?
So,
Wait, say that again so I can type it in the chat.
in the back of my head, I think there are so many religious, not spiritual, but religious people out there who will just completely cover their eyes.
They
the
do.
idea of sexual assault. Because I think if their eyes were open to that, you can't just sit next to the 1 in 4, the 1 in 6, and act like your whole weekend has been fabulous.
That's right. I like to say there's absolutely nothing holy about turning your head when faced with suffering. Nothing.
So I feel for people who really have this strong religious and spiritual connection, yet they have nowhere to turn. And when those folks are going through all of these experiences, and since they were kids going to church, they're probably thinking, I really need a holy space that I can go to. And none of these people want me, except for you.
Absolutely.
But nobody wants me.
Yes.
And I don't have that, because again, I'm not religious, but I'm very spiritual. And I know you can find that spiritual connection.
Yes, you can.
Anywhere.
Yes, you can.
People need that religious and groups, and they need that. None of you people are accepting these folks.
I don't even know the number of young women who have cried and said, I'm not a virgin now. I'm not worth anything. I don't even know. Because they're taught that's where their worth is. Exactly.
And I forget the lady's name, but it was a very public thing where she was kidnapped. Elizabeth Smart.
Yes.
Oh.
And that was the same exact message that she got, that virginity was like a piece of gum.
Yes.
And once it was chewed, that was it. Like a chewed piece of gum.
That's
That
part
was
of
the
purity
message.
culture. That's what they
Okay.
teach you in purity culture. And the presenter often will chew the piece of gum, hold it up and go, now it's worthless.
Wow.
Or show you a paper heart. And if you have given yourself to someone, they begin to shred the heart and say it will never heal because you've given yourself away. Yes. The presentations in purity culture are so damaging. They are so damaging. And where we live, we can't walk away from the religious influence. We can't.
I can't.
But I think I meant the impact on survivors and
Okay,
victims.
okay.
I pretty much have walked away from that as well, as you well know.
I
So-
just feel for those folks. And I think, again, part of this conversation matter is to bring awareness to the situations. But we always end with a call of what can we do? And I'm calling on religious folks to step up and step out and be real.
And be safe.
Be safe as well.
Be a safe place.
Come
Be a
on,
safe
open your hearts
space.
to these
Yeah,
people.
and really
Yes.
mean it. We
Yes.
get donations, and we wouldn't be able to survive without those from the community and churches, and we love that, but we also want you to walk the walk. We don't, if you want to give to our cause and you believe in helping victims, make them feel welcome, and don't judge anything they've been through or where they're at in their life at this moment. If they're actively using substances, maybe they've been doing that to keep themselves alive, to numb the pain. Don't judge them. Let them come and have a safe place, and really mean that. I hadn't gone to church for many years after what happened to me, and I found this place place, and it was come as you are. We accept anyone. I was really excited. I thought, okay, let's do this. I like what I hear for a little bit, and then I'm very naive sometimes. I will just believe the best in absolutely every situation. I don't know how after doing this work for 20 years, but I show up, they're going to have a sermon about homosexuality. And I'm thinking, okay, this seems to be a really accepting church. It was held in a very large forum, not in the church. It was held outside of a church. And I thought, this is great. And no, they talked about how wrong that was, and how we need to reach these people and change them. And I got my 2 children, who were teenage boys at that point, but we marched out of there in the middle of everything. I didn't make them be quiet. I didn't, try not to cause a scene. And we left loudly because I had no idea that was about to happen. And so basically we're going to an hour of hate,
Wow.
and it just blew my mind. So yeah.
And I'm gonna plug ourselves a little bit here with these conversations. I think the least we can do is build the awareness. So it's so important to have folks like you come, who are so close to issues like this, speak of your experiences, because there's so many people who I think do turn a blind eye and think, oh, that's not happening in our area, or because they don't know anyone personally, they don't have to think about
Well, they
it.
don't think they know anyone
They don't
personally.
think-
Odds are they do, but they don't think they do, because they weren't a safe enough space for someone to confide in.
Wow, yeah.
Exactly. And something else that I think we had talked about on another occasion was that, I don't want to name any names, but we have other programs in the area that take in homeless folks or take in families, and maybe the mother and the children, or not the father doesn't. Tell me about your shelter and who is welcomed at your shelter.
Sure. So we are a shelter for victims of domestic violence and their children. That can be and single people with no children, but that can be men, women, anyone who is a victim. They need to be recent victims, because we're an emergency shelter, but they can come to our shelter and we work with them on all the things they need to be independent again. And they can have active drug use issues, and we can help them work on that. They can have any type of mental illness issues. We don't turn anyone away. If you are a victim, you qualify, and all you need to do is call the phone number and we will help you. We also help them with housing once they leave the shelter. And that's really important, because before we were able to do that, it was kind of like putting a Band-Aid on the situation. We're protecting them for those 30 or 60 days, but then what? So now we can help someone be in their own place and help them pay their rent and learn some budgeting skills and be ready to take on their own bills in a few months. And it's really made a huge difference.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think you guys are the only shelter that
Yes.
will take transgender people and families.
As far as domestic violence,
Yes,
yes.
yes.
And I know that the client that we worked with together had tried to leave and go to just a homeless shelter, and was not safe, and was not and was turned away. And I know that happens, not naming any names of where, but I know that happens, and it's not a safe place for them, not physically or mentally a safe place for them.
Now we have a few minutes left. Do you guys have any questions for each other?
Oh, for each other. What if you told them about the counseling that's available for both primary and secondary victims?
Yeah, so we have a therapist at Branch House, a full-time therapist who's there for domestic violence and sexual assault. And it can be 20 years ago that you experienced this sexual assault, or current. And then we have one at the Washington County Family Justice Center, a therapist there as well. And that is free, confidential. You can walk in. You don't have to go in a mental health center and wait. You don't have to wait 6 weeks to get an appointment to see someone. You won't get a bill. We don't bill insurance or anything like that. So you can really come confidentially. Your parents aren't going to get a explanation of benefits from your insurance, or potentially your abusive partner won't get that. There's literally no billing whatsoever. So you can walk in and get that at any point. And it's very open-ended, trauma-focused therapy. We do EMDR therapy and trauma-focused therapy. So it's great because, and that's our most used service at both the Branch House and the Washington County Family Justice Center is people coming for therapy. Typically, you're going to seek therapy a little bit after you've experienced your sexual assault or domestic violence, and because you're really just picking up the pieces and trying to survive during those first few weeks or months after an assault. But people deal with sexual assault sometimes years and years later. So you can come no matter how recent or long ago that was.
And so if people make a financial contribution or a donation, will it go toward paying bills like that? Will it go toward buying materials and items that they may need if they're moving into a new place?
Yeah, yes, and the good thing, we are part of an umbrella agency, which is Frontier Health, but we are completely separate. Our funding, anything that's donated to us stays just specifically in our program. You can be very specific with your donation and say you want to help a victim moving out into her own place. You know, we've got to find a bed, we've got to find a crib for her child, you know, whatever she might need to get started again. Or if you want to donate to the therapy program, my company is really good to me. They care about our clients, and any donation we get goes specifically to our program, and even to what section of our program you would want it, you know, it to.
That's pretty cool. Now there was a question on, somebody just said that Tina and Ruth are community sheroes. We should all feel grateful for. Thank you, ladies. That's from Vicki Powers.
Aw.
There was a thing, I think Sky, I don't know, she had a question where she was telling us we're not that.
I've never been told I wasn't loud
I'm
enough,
rarely told
ever,
that.
ever.
You know, we didn't get too much onto race, but this information is really, really great. I think it's nice to hear. Well, it's not nice, it's sad, sort of, but you're bringing an awareness to another population that this community in this area is like, we don't have any people that get assaulted, or we don't have a reason to have any training.
Yes.
What are y'all talking about? And now we hear it's
Yeah.
up there.
People like to stick their head in the sand and pretend it doesn't exist, but that does nothing. Well, hopefully at our community meeting that can come out of this, if anyone wants to discuss issues, how we can improve services to minority populations, maybe they can show up at the meeting, and we are all ears. We want to learn more and grow, and, you know, just grow our program into a truly safe space. So hopefully
Right.
if anyone has any ideas, they can let us
I'd
know.
love to sit down and talk with you about it, especially looking at getting people of color in.
I would love that.
Do you have any questions for Ruth?
Oh, I just don't know how she puts up with me. She does a lot for me. She does. She collects all these things, and, you know, the very nature of my job, I will have something planned, and I will tell her I will be there to get those wonderful things you collected for me, and I don't show up for a week. But you cannot plan my day, I promise. But I'm just thankful to her. She's with me every step of the way, and every single bright idea I have, I'll just sit and dream up things literally, and I run them by her, and she's there to support me all the way. So I just want to say thank you to her.
That's fabulous.
You're welcome. But I need to say that since I started this in 2013, Tina is the only one who has been doing this for as long as she's been doing. There's something to be said for that. There is a high burnout rate. Compassion fatigue is for real. And Tina's been doing this for more than 20 years. No one else in this region can say that. I'm so proud and impressed and grateful and thankful for Tina. And every day she puts into work.
Aw,
That's
it means a lot to me.
Yay.
I never get burnout. It's new people, new lives we're helping. I don't even see that I don't ever see that in my future, because
That's great.
I'm, you know, very blessed I get to be in these people's lives and help them.
That's great. That's fabulous.
Thank you for letting us talk about
Yes.
this. These are
We
conversations
didn't mean
that don't
to
get to
take over the
happen.
conversation, but we're very happy.
This is how
Yes.
it goes, right? This is exactly, and we have 11 questions. None of them. None of them. I tell you, that's how, it's fabulous. This is the conversation.
This is
that
how we don't get invited back.
No, I was thinking we need a part 2.
matters. Right. And we turn off here. Oh, we're looking around. Hi, folks. But one thing I like to add though is if you haven't been into Cranberries, go into Cranberries and take in just a load of all the stuff that you're like you want to donate, possibly some cash, all of that. Just eat delicious food.
Thanks.
Chicken salad, aka delicious. And you can drop all that stuff off at Cranberries. Go inside to the right, to table, slide it right under that table.
That's
and
right.
we know.
That's right.
Back,
Yeah.
make sure it's clean.
And we did all sorts of odd things. We even
Yes.
did a Christmas tree one year.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
we do an angel tree every Christmas. There are lots of opportunities. And the staff is used to seeing people come in with bags and boxes and just put them in there.
Yeah.
So
Somebody from Cranberries called me today and asked if our kids had Easter baskets, and she's making our kids Easter baskets, and I'm meeting her tomorrow for those. So yeah,
Fabulous.
yeah.
Yay, that's
Yeah.
great. That's great. Well, I'm looking forward to the opportunity to talk and
Yeah.
figure out how to make people aware and move forward with it. I think it's fabulous.
Yeah, sounds
Thank you.
great. Thank you.
Yeah, this is good. All right. How's that? We are right on time.
I know,
Very
it
good.
always goes fast.
Always.
Thank you guys for joining us. We hope you have a great evening.
And a happy Easter. If
Merry
you do
Easter.
that. A Merry Easter, is that what we do?
I'm sorry.
Happy Easter.
But thank you. We
folks.
want to thank our
Enjoy your
guests,
weekend.
Tina and Ruth. Thank you so much for being
Thank
with
you.
us this evening.
Thank you.
And Sky mentions in the chat, another podcast will be out tomorrow, so take a listen for that. You can check out McKinneyCenter.com, programs, conversations that matter.
Thank you, folks. Bye.
Bye.